Welcome to the deep dive. We try to take these complex tech decisions and make them maybe a little less intimidating.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. So today, we're diving into a question that's really buzzing across the IT world. It's been bubbling up, particularly after some big industry shifts.
Okay.
Can Proxmox, specifically when you pair it up with Linstor's Linstor, can it really go head-to-head with the big enterprise veteran VMware VSAN? We're talking performance and cost here.
It's a huge conversation right now. I mean, for very good reason. The whole virtualization landscape, it's shifting under our feet. IT teams are definitely feeling the pressure to, adapt.
Right.
So our mission for this deep dive really is to cut through the noise. We're going to unpack what's happening, weigh up user experiences, get into the technical matchup.
The nitty-gritty.
Exactly. And even look at some benchmark data. The goal is to give you, the listener, a clear picture of what each stack actually offers, and maybe help figure out which one might be the smarter fit for your needs.
Okay, so let's unpack that shifting landscape first, because it really does feel like the ground beneath virtualization has been moving pretty dramatically, especially since, Broadcom acquired VMware back in 2023.
Oh, yeah.
What's been the biggest immediate impact you've seen from that? What are IT leaders really looking for now in an alternative?
I think the biggest thing is uncertainty. That and some very real changes like VMware dropping the free ESXi tier. That was big.
Yeah.
And tightening up licensing. We've seen this noticeable shift to per-core licensing models. And that's really forced a lot of places, big and small, to question if sticking with the VMware ESXi and VSAN combo is still cost-effective.
So what are they looking for instead?
Control, mostly. Yeah. Cost predictability. And, they still need that rock-solid performance they've gotten used to.
And it sounds like Proxmox has really kind of stepped into that gap, right? It's emerging as a solid plan B, maybe even plan A for a lot of organizations now.
Definitely.
I mean, it's open source nature, the flexibility, that strong community backing. It makes it incredibly appealing. But there's always that critical piece, isn't there? Storage.
Always. Storage is the make or break component.
Right. While Proxmox handles the virtualization layer fine, you need solid storage for any serious deployment.
Precisely. And look, VSAN has this formidable reputation, right, built over years, delivering incredibly fast, reliable storage, especially for the really critical stuff, high-speed databases, massive workloads that can't handle latency.
Okay.
Proxmox, on the other hand, while it's brilliant at hyperconvergence, it relies on integrating with other solutions for that software-defined storage, like Ceph, which is common, or the one we're focusing on a bit more today, Linstor's Linstor. So the central debate, it really boils down to this. Can these Proxmox combos, especially something like Linstor, actually hit that vSAN level performance and offer that enterprise-grade reliability?
Okay, let's dig into that then. Proxmox and Linstor. For listeners who maybe aren't familiar with this specific pairing, how would you describe that stack? What's the core appeal?
Sure. So Proxmox VE itself, it's based on KVM, it's open source, handles virtualization. It also does LXC for containers, so it's really versatile.
Right, KVM and containers.
Yeah, it's a fantastic choice for SMBs, for home labs, or, any IT pro who really likes having full control getting under the hood.
Okay.
Now, when you pair it with Linstor's Linstor, you're basically adding a powerful software-defined storage layer on top. This gives you the crucial stuff: high availability, live migration of the VMs without downtime.
vMotion equivalent, basically.
Sort of, yeah. And block-level replication using DRBD. That's really Linstor's core tech, their secret sauce.
Okay, that definitely sounds compelling on paper. But what's fascinating when you start looking around, reading forums, Reddit, the community discussions are really polarized, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely.
You hear these almost legendary stories of performance. It blew away my SAN. But then you also hear these warnings. What are some of those standout success stories?
Yeah.
The ones that highlight the potential here, maybe with Linstor or even Ceph.
You're right. The anecdotes are, well, they're all over the place, but some are impressive. We've definitely heard sysadmins talking about making Proxmox with Ceph absolutely scream. Like crazy IOPS.
With caveats, I bet.
Usually, yeah. Especially when they've invested heavily in hardware, NVMe, SSDs all around, 100 gigabit networks. That's serious enterprise level stuff.
Okay.
And then there's that specific story. I think it was on Reddit. Someone built an all NVMe setup, AMD EPYC processors, RDMA networking, the works, all running Linstor, their claim. It blew away their old commercial SAN, just completely outperformed it. So it absolutely shows the ceiling, the potential is there if you configure it right.
That is a bold claim. It definitely highlights potential. But what's the flip side? Is that ceiling achievable for everyone? Or are there some pretty significant hurdles with Linstor specifically that we need to talk about?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? Linstor, well, it isn't exactly plug and play. Community feedback often mentions it being, let's say, picky.
Picky. How so?
Well, this pickiness isn't just about complexity, it's a trade-off. Unlike commercial solutions that try to simplify everything, maybe hide the knobs, open source block storage like Linstor gives you super granular control over everything.
Which sounds good, but
But that power comes with responsibility, right? You need deep tuning, you really need to know your stuff. Especially with network settings, things like max buffers and send buff size, getting those just right for optimal performance. And there's also that recurring worry about the dreaded split brain issues, where storage nodes get out of sync. That's a major headache you do not want in production.
yeah, split brain is bad news. And didn't we also hear that Proxmox actually backed away from official DRBD support? Something about Linbit's licensing changes.
That's right, that happened. So while it sounds great managing more than, say, 2 nodes with Linstor, users report it gets trickier fast.
Okay.
It seems like maybe it's fine for a home lab or a small, really adventurous team that loves a challenge, has deep Linux skills.
But maybe not for a bigger company.
Yeah, probably not so much for a bigger organization that just needs stuff to work seamlessly, reliably, without constant tinkering. It's like building a custom race car versus buying one off the showroom floor. Both can be fast, but the effort involved is wildly different.
That's a great analogy. The expertise required becomes part of the total cost, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's not just about software licenses. Okay, so let's pivot. Let's talk about the other side. ESES plus VAM.
The incumbent.
The incumbent, exactly. The gold standard for long time and enterprise setups. ESXi itself, it's a Type 1 hypervisor, runs directly on the hardware. Very thin, very efficient layer. And VSAN takes the local disks from your servers, your ESXi hosts, and it intelligently stitches them together, creates a shared storage pool. And it handles the smart replication, the failover capabilities, all that enterprise goodness. It's designed for simplicity, especially at scale.
And there's a reason so many places, big and small, still stick with it.
Yeah.
It's known for being incredibly fast, super reliable, and that tight integration with vCenter, VMware's management platform, that's huge.
It really is.
You get features like vMotion for live migrations, DRS for balancing workloads automatically, automatic space reclamation, all baked right in. And the storage management itself is often praised. I saw one user describe it as brain-dead simple.
In a good way.
Yeah, in a good way, meaning it just works without a fuss.
Yeah.
And when you pair it with good hardware, NVMe drives, 25 or 100 gig networking, it's a beast.
Yeah.
Often the leader for database workloads, anything really sensitive to latency.
It absolutely performs, no question. And that brings us right to the critical point.
The cost.
The cost. That performance, that simplicity. It isn't cheap. Broadcom's new per-core license model, that's a significant hurdle.
Explain that a bit more, the per-core thing.
Sure. They now have this 16-core minimum per CPU. So even if your server CPU has, say, only 12 cores, you're still paying for 16 cores worth of licensing.
Ouch.
Yeah. Plus, like you said, the free ESX tier, gone. And you often need extra licenses on top for things like NSX networking or vSAN itself. It all adds up fast, especially for smaller businesses. It's causing a lot of people to seriously rethink the whole value proposition.
Okay, so given those, pretty significant cost factors on the VMware side, the real question for a lot of IT pros is, who's actually faster? When you strip it all down to raw performance, we have some benchmarks, right? Let's talk data. What do the numbers actually tell us?
The numbers are fascinating, actually. There was one test by Blockbridge. They compared Proxmox VE 7.2 against ESXi 7.0, and Proxmox outpaced ESXi in, get this, 56 out of 57 storage tests.
56 out of 57, seriously?
Seriously.
Yeah.
We're talking like 50% better peak IOPS, 30% lower latency, 38% more bandwidth. These are not small differences. That's a significant performance lead in those specific tests.
Wow. That's genuinely surprising. Almost counterintuitive for people who still think open source means inherently slower. What other data do we have? Any other benchmarks?
Yeah, Starwind also did a test using Proxmox. They compared their own Starwind VSAN solution against Linstor RBD and against Ceph, all within a 2-node Proxmox cluster.
Okay, and the results there.
In that specific test, Starwind VSAN, using NVMe over Fabrics with RDMA, came out fastest. Then Linstor, then Ceph.
Interesting. Was VMware VSAN in that Starwind test?
No, important note, VMware's VSAN wasn't included in that specific Starwind comparison, though VSAN is widely acknowledged to have strong out-of-the-box performance, particularly when you scale it up.
So what these benchmarks seem to be revealing then is kind of a paradigm shift, maybe. The ceiling for open source performance, it's much higher than maybe people thought.
Exactly.
The insight isn't just that Proxmox can perform, it's that maybe the only real barrier to getting that enterprise-grade speed now is your hardware investment and your willingness to really learn the tuning.
That's it, exactly. It puts the power and potentially huge cost savings back in your hands. It redefines what's possible outside those traditional expensive vendor ecosystems.
Yeah, okay. So while we're talking storage, are there other alternatives or maybe some nerdy insights we should touch on? You mentioned Ceph.
Right, Ceph. It's definitely not out of the race. A lot of those bad performance stories you hear about Ceph, often it boils down to underpowered networking or just misconfigurations.
Oh, okay.
Users really stress you need at least 10 GBPs for Ceph's back-end cluster network, minimum. And if you're using NVMe drives, you really should be looking at 25, maybe even 100 GBPs networking. It's all about feeding the beast, basically. Avoid those bottlenecks.
Makes sense. What else? You mentioned Starwind vSAN earlier.
Yeah, Starwind vSAN. Some folks are looking at that as a kind of middle ground. It is a commercial solution, so not free like Ceph or Linstor's Core, but it's often more affordable than VMware, and the benchmarks show it performs really well, even in smaller Proxmox setups.
Okay. Any other up-and-comers?
Well, there's XCPing with XOR. That's also from Linbit, interestingly. It's another player trying to gain some traction. Looks promising, but from what we've seen, the consensus is kind of not quite ready for prime time yet, for serious production. Some adventurous people are kicking the tires, testing it out, but it feels like early days still. Definitely one to watch, though.
Okay, so if we try to synthesize all this, what's the sort of general industry perspective? What are the experts saying when they compare these?
Okay, generally the consensus looks something like this. Proxmox is great for avoiding vendor lock-in. It gives you incredible flexibility with storage, right? You got Ceph, ZFS built in, Linstor, others.
Yeah.
You pick. However, Ceph needs that tuning we talked about to really shine. And Linstor, despite its potential, might still feel a bit too green for some production environments, especially those that need absolute ironclad stability from day one, maybe without deep internal expertise to manage it.
So Proxmox is ideal if you're cost sensitive and you have the time and, crucially, the in-house expertise to tinker and optimize.
Exactly. You need to be willing to roll up your sleeves.
Okay. And VMware VSAN.
VMware VSAN is, well, it's polished, it's very well supported, super reliable. If you can handle those licensing costs, which are going up, it's generally the better fit if you have the budget, and your priority is just make it work, out of the box, with minimal fuss, and you value that comprehensive support system.
So who actually wins then? Is there a winner in this showdown?
Well, like always, it really depends, right? It depends on your priorities, your resources.
Okay, let's break it down. Raw performance.
Raw performance. vSAN probably still takes the crown for out-of-the-box power and ease of deployment, especially for really demanding stuff. But Proxmox with Linstor or Ceph can catch up.
Absolutely, provided you throw the right hardware at it and put in the tuning effort.
Okay.
Price.
Proxmox wins. I mean, no contest, really. 0 licensing fees versus VMware's steep per-core model. That's a huge difference, a potential game changer.
Ease of use.
Ease of use. vSAN's simplicity, the integrated tools in vCenter, that probably gives it the edge for most teams. Linstor's setup curve is definitely steeper, requires more hands-on knowledge. Flexibility. Proxmox is the clear winner there. It's a playground, right?
Yeah.
KVM, hypervisor, LXC containers, all those storage options, Ceph, ZFS, Linstor. You can really customize your setup. VMware is much more prescriptive.
So the bottom line hasn't shifted too dramatically. Then vSAN is still probably the best bet for big enterprises. Places that value that super high reliability, consistent performance, polished support, and have the budget.
Pretty much, yeah. That seems fair.
But for, let's call them scrappy IT shops, or maybe just cost-conscious admins who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty, who like getting into the weeds, Proxmox with Ceph, or maybe Starwind VSAN, looks like a really compelling alternative.
Totally compelling. It can genuinely surprise you with the performance you can squeeze out for a fraction of the cost.
And where does that leave Linstor specifically in this picture?
Linstor specifically, look, it's promising, definitely. It has the potential to deliver serious performance, especially if you pair it with good hardware. But for now, based on the feedback and complexity, maybe not quite jackpot material just yet for every enterprise scenario.
Okay.
It still seems to need a bit more polish, maybe as simply a deployment path, before it can truly compete at that highest enterprise level without needing significant manual effort and expertise.
So there we have it. The core trade-offs seem pretty clear. It's cost versus ease of use. It's out-of-the-box performance versus that tunability and flexibility.
Yep. It really boils down to your budget, your team's skills, and your tolerance for getting under the hood and tinkering.
And, as virtualization keeps evolving so fast, it makes you wonder, how might that balance shift between open source flexibility and that commercial polish? How will that change in the next few years?
That's the big question.
And what does that mean for how you, the listener, approach your IT infrastructure decisions over the next 5 years?
Especially as new contenders keep popping up and the established players keep changing the rules. Definitely something to mull over.